He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, checking the time. It was 11:45. The game had lasted barely 2 hours, but it had felt like an eternity. He scrolled through his messages, half hoping to find some explanation, but there was nothing. No emails, no texts, no record of the invitation. It was as if the game had never happened. Magnus stepped outside, the cold Icelandic air biting at his skin. The streets of Reykjavik were quiet, the city still waking up. He walked aimlessly, his thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. Had it all been a dream, a hallucination, or something else entirely? As he turned a corner, he noticed a small cafe tucked away in a narrow alley. The sign above the door read, "The Pawn's Gambit." Something about the name drew him in. He pushed open the door, the bell jingling softly. The cafe was cozy, with warm lighting and the faint aroma of coffee and pastries. A few patrons sat at tables, sipping drinks and chatting quietly. Behind the counter stood an elderly man with a kind face and sharp eyes. He looked up as Magnus entered, a knowing smile spreading across his lips.
"Ah, dear Magnus,"
the man said, his voice warm and welcoming.
"I've been expecting you."
Magnus froze.
You know me?
The man chuckled.
"Of course. You're quite famous after all. But more importantly, you've just come from the Hall of Champions, haven't you?"
Magnus's heart skipped a beat.
How do you know that?
The man gestured to a small table in the corner.
"Sit, I'll explain."
Magnus hesitated, then took a seat. The man brought over 2 cups of coffee and sat across from him. For a moment, they sat in silence, the steam from the coffee rising between them.
"My name is Eric,"
the man said finally.
"and I know what you've just experienced because I've seen it before."
Magnus leaned forward, his curiosity piqued.
Seen? What? What's going on?
Eric took a sip of his coffee, his expression thoughtful.
The Hall of Champions is special. It's a place where the past and present converge, where legends come to life. You're not the first to play there, and you won't be the last.
Magnus frowned.
Are you saying Fischer was real? That I actually played him?
Eric nodded.
In a sense, yes. But not the Fischer you know from history books. That was a reflection, a manifestation of his legacy, his genius. The Hall has a way of bringing such things to life, of testing those who enter.
Testing?
Magnus echoed.
Testing for what?
Eric smiled.
To see if you're ready or not.
Ready for what?
Eric leaned back, his eyes twinkling.
For the next level. The game you played was just the beginning. There are others waiting for you, maybe other legends or other challengers. But be warned, the deeper you go, the more you'll be forced to confront, not just your opponents, but yourself.
Magnus sat back, his mind reeling. The idea was absurd, unbelievable, and yet it felt right. The game, the intensity, Fischer's uncanny play, it all made a strange kind of sense.
Why me?
He asked finally. Eric shrugged.
Why not you? You're one of the greatest to ever play the game. But greatness isn't just about skill, it's about understanding, about growth. The Hall chooses those who have the potential to transcend.
Magnus stared at his coffee, the steam swirling in intricate patterns. He thought about the game, about Fischer's final words. I'm a reflection, a mirror, and so are you.
What happens now?
He asked quietly. Eric smiled.
That's up to you. You can walk away, forget this ever happened. Or you can return to the Hall, face the next challenge and see where the path leads.
Magnus looked up, his resolve hardening.
I'll go back.
Eric nodded as if he had expected nothing less.
Then prepare yourself, the next game won't be easy.
As Magnus left the cafe, the cold air felt sharper, more alive. He glanced back at the sign above the door, The Pawn's Gambit. A small smile tugged at his lips. He had always loved a good gambit. The game wasn't over, not even close.